question 173 of 2015 under my name to the Honourable Minister for Industry, Trade and Tourism. The question is, recently the Prime Minister launched the Fijian Trade Policy Framework. Can the Minister explain what is the Fiji Trade Policy Framework and how will it benefit Fiji's trade and investment? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. I give the floor to the Honourable Minister for Industry, Trade and Tourism. Point of order.
If the way the question has been framed, it will end up the Minister giving another ministerial statement. Yes. If that is the case, I propose that he should follow the normal procedure to submit this under the normal procedure of ministerial statement. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. I'll just give a ruling on that one. This question has been agreed to by the Business Committee to be tabled in today's agenda. Do I have another point of order? No? Thank you. I now give the floor to the Honourable Minister for Industry, Trade and Tourism.
I rise to respond to the question by the Honourable Rika, question number 173, 2015, and I promise it won't be a very long answer. It's very short. Madam Speaker, the Honourable Prime Minister launched the Fijian Trade Policy Framework, and this trade policy represents basically our shared interest towards the common goal of improving our trade performance and enhancing Fiji's position as the hub of the Pacific. It will basically determine how to connect all the dots and address our production capacity and supply-side constraints with the ultimate objective of enhancing Fiji's position in global trade. It harnesses our opportunities in international trade, Madam Speaker, and it will mean more demand for Fijian-grown products and Fijian-made goods and services, basically leading to increased investment from the private sector and creation of jobs and wealth, better standard of living for all Fijians. Madam Speaker, the purpose of the framework is to ensure a continuation of a coordinated and consistent approach in our national development agenda and to better maximize our development gains and also by enhancing Fijian industries and investment exports of goods and services, as well as advance Fiji's interests in international trade negotiations. The framework, Madam Speaker, is through the implementation mechanism, and it will bring together all the trade investment related agencies, including the private sector and civil society, to have a coordinated approach to growing trade and investment opportunities. Madam Speaker, like the Green Growth Framework that was also launched by the Honourable Prime Minister and the soon-to-be-launched National Development Plan, the Trade Policy Framework basically embodies the Fijian government's drive to create a better Fiji.
Thank you. Is it a point of order or supplementary question?
Supplementary question.
Thank you. Supplementary question, Honourable Bill Singh.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the Minister for his response. My question to the Minister is, which are the key export markets for Fiji? Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Minister.
Speaker, in 2014, exports grew by about 11.5%, which amounts to about 2,292 million compared to a 4% decline in 2013. And this increase is due to higher growth in re-export and domestic stuff. Madam Speaker, as a percent of GDP, total exports, excluding aircraft, grew to about 28.5% in the review period compared to 27.8% in 2013. The average over the last 5 years as a percent of GDP is around 29%. And the following markets, Madam Speaker, have emerged as the key top export destinations. The United States, Madam Speaker, accounts for 16% of exports. Australia accounts for 15% of exports. The United Kingdom accounts for 11% of exports. China accounts for 8% of exports, and New Zealand accounts for 6% of the exports.
Thank you.
Madam Speaker, supplementary question.
Supplementary question, the Honourable Karawaki.
Would the Honourable Minister explain to this Honourable House how would the trade partnership, the Fiji Trade Policy Framework assist Fiji in its relationship and the benefits that it would derive from the international and the regional trade partnership agreement. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, is he referring to the MSG trade partnership agreements?
Clarification.
Whether it's MSG or whether it's the forum or regional trade partnership agreement, because it refers, the Honourable Minister, Madam Speaker, refers to the international trade negotiation that it would pursue the directions that would assist from having this trade partnership framework. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, if I may answer that. Securing and maintaining an improved market access to the regional and international international markets for Fijian goods and services are basically done by the Trade Policy Framework outlines it specifically and says we are basically securing at least one new alternative market for sugar by 2016. We're pushing for the continuation of the US generalized system of preferences, an increase in Fiji goods eligible under that scheme. We're negotiating a long-term and a sustainable preferential market access scheme with the United States of America by 2025. Where we are successfully concluding negotiations on a development-friendly, comprehensive economic partnership agreement with the European Union. We are successfully concluding negotiations on a development-friendly PACER Plus agreement. We're working towards finalizing and implementing a fully-fledged, comprehensive Melanesian Spearhead Group trade agreement. And we're working towards consolidating and implementing a fully-fledged Pacific Islands countries trade agreement and concluding negotiations with China on the preferential market access scheme. These are the things that are currently taking under place, and it's all encompassed within the actual framework.
Thank you. And I give the floor to the Honourable Sanjit Patel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Can the Minister inform the House how will the Ministry ensure that the Fijians are aware of the achievements of the Fijian Trade Policy Framework?
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The framework's implementation mechanism, Madam Speaker, is an all-inclusive thing at all levels. It's not just the government's framework. The private sector and civil society are involved at subcommittee level, and that is providing policy recommendation, and it's also at the decision-making level of the National Trade and Development Council, which is to be formed. The Council actually reports to Cabinet on the progress and updates, which also will be provided to Parliament. This framework is it's a 10-year document, Madam Speaker, which has a mid-term review. And however, yearly and two-yearly reviews will be undertaken to ensure that the implementation is on track and also to take into account new or revised recommendations to enhance the framework. But in short also, Madam Speaker, it is actually a living document. It's not set in stone. So at that levels, when it's done, there will be changes obviously in the next 10 years. It's a live, living document.
Thank you. And the last supplementary question, the Honourable Sala Tiranrondo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I didn't quite catch it, but I'd like to ask the Honourable Minister if there is an implementation matrix which would simply show us how this, how and who will implement this policy framework in terms of achieving its bigger purpose, which I believe is to offer employment. To be able to address the high unemployment rate in Fiji. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The framework comes with a detailed implementation plan, yes, a matrix, and it spells out the policy measures and strategies that will drive and enhance domestic and international trade, obviously recognizes the private sector as the engine for economic growth and development. It will be implemented over the next 10 years, Madam Speaker, with contributions of all the stakeholders. The National Trade and Development Council, which is chaired by the Minister for Industry, Trade and Tourism, will be the main implementation vehicle of this framework and will report to Cabinet, Madam Speaker. It is a forum where trade, investment, industry and business-related issues will be discussed and strategies developed and implemented accordingly. There is also a Trade and Development Committee, Madam Speaker, which will be chaired by the Permanent Secretary for Industry, Trade and Tourism, and it will be the executive arm of the Council, and will meet as and when required to provide directions to the Council. The subcommittees also, Madam Speaker, will be the technical bodies of the NTDC, and the subcommittees, like the Council, will be inclusive and representative of all stakeholders. And there are 5 actual subcommittees, Madam Speaker, so that I can spell it out properly for everybody. These subcommittees include representatives from relevant government agencies, private sector and civil society. There's a trade and investment facilitation, there's agriculture, services, manufacturing and sustainable development.
Thank you.